Well, the problem is they think it's a failure in the technique, and not a failure in their expression of the technique.
Right.
So that's a big problem. I see people give up on the basics way too easy. That they say, oh, you know what, after the blue belt, scissor sweep doesn't work, or guys just learn to counter it or whatever. And instead of improving on that and just saying, okay, what are they doing to shut it down? What are they doing to stop it? And how can I make some subtle adjustments? Or is it my timing that's off? Or do I need to make some adjustments so that it does work? Or the cross collar choke doesn't work, right? People say, oh, the cross collar choke doesn't work. But then you see Haueter can run through a whole division, his division absolute, in the world championships, submitting everyone with a cross collar choke.
Right.
Something that we all learned as a white belt.
He didn't give up on it.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times people are just too quick to give up on the basics and look for another technique that might solve the problem, instead of just making the subtle adjustments or trying to figure out what is it about my expression of this technique that is causing it not to work.
Right.
And can I keep this technique and just make a minor adjustment and now it will work? And that's a big thing with Rickson's game. He evolved the basics even from Elio,
right.
The way that we do so many things. I saw it change from the traditional way to the way that Rickson was doing it, and he made it so much more effective, more efficient.
Like, I've seen 3 or 4 people who've gone from pure white belt to competitive world-class black belt in about 4 or 5 years. I've seen it happen about 3 or 4 times. I won't name names, but world-class competitors, right? In every case, the only thing they had in common, they weren't great athletes per se. They didn't train 10 times more than a lot of other people do. They trained a lot, but a lot of people train a lot. The one thing they all had in common was that kind of innate, curious intelligence that cared more about problem solving than it did that day's victory in practice. And long term, that lends itself to creating a world-class competitor. Here in the gym, if you watch John Diggins' roll, he's a very good example of this. He competes more than most of the other guys. And he's competed more than most of my black belts in terms of just pure competition. And he competes so much better than he often rolls in the gym, but it's not because he's performing better in competition. It's because he cares less about winning in the gym than he does just learning. So half the time he's experimenting, he's letting people do stuff, he's seeing how deep he can let something go before he counters it. He's playing and learning, right? He's not just coming in and trying to crush the other person. And what that does is that lends itself to creating somebody who's technically a monster. So when he does go in and compete against Roberto Terra, whoever it is, or Roberto Tellus, he had a very good match with Tellus, who's world class, right? He can hold his own and maybe win.
I think another important distinction that my friends understand, but like people who may be a little offended by what I say might not understand, is that I was not fanatical about jiu-jitsu. I was fanatical about truth in martial arts. So I went to LA not only seeking out Rickson, but the Inosanto Academy and all the instructors there, and that was a buffet, right? I did the Junfang classes, the Muay Thai classes, the Silat, Filipino martial arts, and on top of that, the Shuto class. So part of what convinced me to focus more on jiu-jitsu was not necessarily a comparison of, is it better to grapple than to kickbox, for example. That's a separate question. It was doing grappling at 2 different places and realizing that one methodology, because I was basically putting in relatively equal mat time at both places, and feeling like here I learned 100 techniques that I can't use, and here I learned 5 techniques and I'm here. And then I learned 200 techniques, and then I learned 5 more techniques. And it was literally a matter of months, not years, a matter of like 3 or 4 months. And it doesn't get more empirical than just going into a class and rolling with people. And I don't, I'm not a pro athlete. I'm not a bad athlete, but I'm not gifted. And, you know, I just, you can't, there's nothing, that's one of the beauties of jiu-jitsu or any grappling art. It's like, if someone chokes you, it's not like arguable. If someone arm locks you, because you're going to try to escape, but if you tap, it's not really arguable. And so I just had a really side-by-side, open mind, comparing them both in real time. Not, I'm going to quit this and do that, but really doing them together. And the learning curve, the kind of attitude of the people I was training with, the way I felt when I was done, which is subjective but important, the way I felt when I went into the shower. I mean, everything was just kind of organically pushing me towards jiu-jitsu.
Sure. Pro wrestling evolved because people don't want to see real wrestling because it's boring. People want to see arguing and people being hit in the face. MMA changed. They added rounds and other stuff because grappling is basically fun to do, not fun to watch. Right? It's just kind of one of those things. It's my pet peeve that people who host competitions, they're catering to the audience as opposed to the athlete. And that's what always makes me mad. Well, we can't have that. The match will be boring. Who fucking cares if the match is boring? Let's see who wins, right? Now, any art of all these martial arts are a way to gain a mastery, an area that would otherwise not happen if we just said, let's put you and you in a pit and brawl it out, whoever wins. You wouldn't learn the art of boxing if you allowed clinching kicks. You learn the art of boxing by isolating boxing. You learn how to have a guard by isolating guard. And then what happens is, because we love contests and sport, we create rules to make a game out of a martial art. There was a time where wrestling, before jiu-jitsu, people didn't see it as a martial art. They just saw it as a sport. Kung Fu was a martial art. Wrestling was wrestling. It was like tennis or basketball. And MMA completely flipped that upside down. Also, the older gis, the sleeves weren't as long and they were wider. And guys wore belts that hung down here when I started. And you always began with a stand-up every time because you kept with the golden rules. Because fights don't start on the ground, they start standing, unless you're in, like, I don't know, a bathhouse. And like some people say that, whether it was Maeda or Helio and Carlos or whoever, that there was this art of jiu-jitsu that was invented and then we're all learning it. When really it's an evolution. And the Americans and MMA completely changed everything. And if you can watch some of those old tapes of, I think, Fabio Gurgel against Mark Kerr, you can see where he had a hard time controlling on that head. You can actually see where Mark learned in the fight how to headbutt. So, again, what are the golden rules of grappling? Number 1, be the guy on top. Win on top, stay on top. Number 2, win on bottom, have a guard, you shall not pass. Number 3, never forget, rule number 1, easily forgotten, due to the seductive and rewarding nature of non-striking grappling.
It's an interesting part of jiu-jitsu, which if you see two guys fighting and both of them are comfortable, even though it's a position strap, something wrong. In real fight, when I'm comfortable, you're supposed to be uncomfortable. And you're looking for your comfortable, and then I'm uncomfortable. So it's a deal of whoever is on control, bringing pressure, bringing discomfort, trying to go for the kill. So that kind of situation is translates in effectiveness. You know, you train with the guy, he's escalating a process to submit you. You can see you go behind, you're going to get tired, and eventually you tap, you say, wow, man, that's too tough. Because the guy is really coming to win. When the guy don't come in to win, he waits for you to make advantage or a point. So it becomes a lighter version of jiu-jitsu. Becomes something more strategic to win the medal, not to really win you. So it's more like using the tools I can use to save my energy, to capitalize on a little advantage or something. So that's diminish the bullseye, the objectivity, the submission, and the pressure the fighter is supposed to give. But you see a lot of the champions, they already have established a game plan which has nothing to do with progressive offense. It has to be with holding, stalling, adjusting, and make the guy feel like trap, and wherever he try to go, he capitalize, get a little advantage, and then set. So it's more strategic than actually pressure. And I have no, it doesn't appeal for me, that kind of game. The tournaments today, the rules are allowed in so much stalling, so much grip, so much details, which you have to. For example, my son, Kron, he said, Dad, I don't want to compete in official tournaments anymore. I cannot stand the rules. Yeah. The guys don't want to fight me. They want to stall, they want to hold. And I have to spend my time trying to free myself instead fighting. So I like to fight no rules. I like to fight no submissions only. But I don't like to fight sport jiu-jitsu competitions because it's just like the guys are super well trained, juice up, and they just want to stall and hold position. So it's no the rules today, they go against what I believe. So in my view, is a must changing also the rules, stopping the stalling. If we stop the stalling in the competition, it's already a huge change. Because people has to be more dynamic and looking for either escape or control. So it's a different approach. So I really enforce competition. The rules are a little crooked right now.
One of the things that I took from your teaching a long time ago that really made an impact on me was the idea of, and it was actually something that I heard you say when after you were rolling and sitting up against a wall, of taking a part out of the game, whether it's holding mount or escaping mount or guard, whatever it is, and isolating that part and working it with resistance so you get timing, but just that one piece.
Yes.
Instead of just rolling. And that, to me, that made huge sense.
Yeah.
It's been how I've taught since. I think that's a big part of the success of the organization has come from that.
Yes.
And the thing I wonder, well, there's two pieces. One is, if you want to talk a little bit about why that's so important, and then two is, it still seems to be something that very few people do.
Yes, because first is very important because at one point you learn the position, a sweep or a choke or arm bar or whatever in the guard. And by learning that, you get the knowledge. But you have to have time of training in that specifically position to develop all the nuances, all the details around that.
Time.
Yes. So if you learn the position and then okay, now let's roll, and you pass through the guard so quick and immediately cross side, immediately mounted, immediately escape, so you don't have the time to really mature the ideas and the changes. So I always been doing partial trainings. That means guard. You try to pass, you try to defend. Once you pass, okay, stop, pass again. And so the idea is to repeat and repeat under action, under normal conditions, under resistance, the same position, because and then you become more sophisticated to put your knee in the right position or keep. So I love to be in control of that position, and then immediately goes to the back. Okay, you try to escape from the back, I try to choke you. Soon you escape, back again. So I develop my skills to choke you, to keep you in control, and you develop your skills to escape. So if we spend 10 minutes on this back and forth, your knowledge about that particular position becomes much bigger than just 30 seconds and a 10-minute roll.
Right.
So the idea of, during the class, teaching, drill the positions, after the drilling, partial training for a long period, like a big neck of the class. And after that, okay, like a free roll. And then you let this free sparring to make people happy in different dimensions, whatever. But it's important, this kind of partial training, which is hard, but it's control in a way, because once you escape from the mount, try again. So you have the idea of, oh, I missed now because my weight. So either by attacking or defending same position, and different guys sometimes, because I like to do partial training one-on-one, or if it's a group class, we'll be the same guard position, but now I'm in your guard, and then I'm in John's guard, and then Mark guard, and goes like this, only guard. Right. So that's give a nice ability to handle different body shapes and different leverage, and questions will happen and problems. So that's give a sophisticated way to develop that kind of growth in that particular piece. And then when you add, it's like a perfect puzzle.
Yeah, that's always made absolute sense to me. So my follow-up question is, why is it, my experience has been, I have a lot of respect for all kinds of different jiu-jitsu instructors, but that approach still seems to be kind of rare. What I see is the technique and then roll. Technique and then roll.
Yes, because, I mean, in a regular seminar, at least 20 black belts, and sometimes I get a black belt to escape from a UPA, and they don't know quite perfectly. They tough. They can handle positions, they can survive, they can eventually escape. But it's about like 20%, 30% technique and a lot of heart, a lot of experience, a lot of toughness. So what I feel like is a lot of the people who today is in charge of teaching, they coming from a background, they just developed by competing, training. So in their mind, the learning is coming from this kind of crazy action and instead details. When I come into a seminar, I like to give small details for experienced guys. And they're gonna say, wow, I never know about that. So for me, it's always about details. It's all about sophistication on the application of the moves. For other guys, it's all about agility, training, and capacity to be competitive and be sharp. That's why they don't put too much attention on details on partial trainings, because they just don't have that school. It grows so much. And guys from, oh, I'm a student of a student of a student of somebody. So this guy will come in and play a much tougher game than they're supposed to be if he gets close to the source, you know?
Right.
There's a lot of techniques that are unusual and is being unused now.
Right.
I think every instructor, when they come in, they teach a seminar, they kind of want to wow people, they want to impress people, they want people to be happy with what they're learning, and so they feel like they need to show them something really cool. And so I think people are like, I want to show you something, the latest and the greatest, something that you've never seen before, and you're going to be blown away by, check out this new move, or so more impress you with something that you don't know. And for me, you know, probably a blessing and a curse, but I never learned any of that fancy stuff, you know, training with Rickson. Rickson's game was very, very simple, very basic, but there was so much depth to everything that we did that we didn't need to kind of go outside of the basics to have jiu-jitsu work. And so that was a really, you know, so powerful for me, is seeing Rickson train with world champion after world champion after world champion and submit them with things that I was already learning at white belt. Oh, he caught him in an arm bar from the mount. Oh, he caught him in an arm lock from the closed guard. Oh, he got him with a scissor sweep, you know, so cross collar choke, you know. So all of these things that already I had been learning as a white belt, that's what he was using to beat these guys that were multiple time world champions. And so I knew that if I just put enough time into these basic techniques, I never saw him do anything fancy, you know. So I knew if I just put enough time into developing these basics, you know, hopefully I could have that same level of effectiveness as him.